Scottsville most of your young life?
Yeah, on and off. Leavenworth, Scottsville, different points of interest like that. I was one of the highlights of Scottsville. I was very very reserved person growing up and everything. Actually, I was born to a poor family there. My mother had to order me out of a Sears Roebuck catalog. Couldn't even afford laxatives. She had to sit me on the john and tell me ghost stories. It was quite an ordeal growing up. It was just of course, I don't want to talk about myself too much. What else would you like to hear?
Just generally about growing up in Scottsville.
Well, it was quite a town back then. We had, of course, the courthouse was there, and there was Emmer Tittle, and Emmer was she's quite a character, as Frank can tell you. And your mother and I, Jane, would not believe Emmer Tittle when I told her. And the first time I took her to Scottsville, I parked up in front of the courthouse, and I heard Emmer coming down East Main Street in her famous rendition of "Purdy, Purdy, Purdy Mama." And I stopped, and Jean said, "Aren't you going to pull out?" I said, "Not until you see this show." She said, "What's that thing coming here?" I said, "That's Emmer Tittle that you said didn't exist." And I called Emmer over to the car, and of course we exchanged these pleasantries, Emmer and I. It cost me 8 cigarettes. I offered her one. She took a whole handful like this. And she never doubted Emmer Tittle again. Matter of fact, she had a few encounters with her in stores and shops around town. It was quite a deal. Well, Scottsville was, when I was growing up, was very much different, very different than it is now. And I don't know how to describe the change, except that, of course, Betty's camps are now for kids that are severely handicapped or some kind of physical, either critically or terminally into their sickness, whatever it is. They have a cancer weekend, and they have a MS weekend and all that. And it's run by very capable people. The Arnold Schwarzkopf, General Schwarzkopf's private aide during Desert Storm is running it. And he does a very good job. Good program, man. Let's see, what are the other highlights around Scottsville? The Amish colony there is what I like in Scottsville, and all the things that they produce and everything. So it's, other than that, I was 10 years old when the war broke out. I was watching, was it Over the Rainbow, that Judy Garland program. This kid came in and told us that the Japs had attacked Pearl Harbor. And after that, it was quite a turnover of manpower there, everybody running off to join their preference of service. My brother, Frank's dad, Frank, went into the, it was AMGOT, kind of a branch of the Secret Service. He was a guard at San Francisco Conference. My other brother, Billy Ray, went into the Air Force, and he was stationed around various places, Buckley and Lowry Field in Colorado and everything. I went to military school. I was too young for the service. And that's about it. After the war, we all three and our sister, Laura Catherine, ended up in Scottsville. And we spent some very pleasant years there. I graduated from Scottsville High School then, went to Western Kentucky University. Billy Ray had an affiliation with Cal Turner and his brother-in-law, and from there Cal went into business, and of course, started Dollar General, which now is about 10,000 stores. And Billy Ray was the main supplier of goods in the early days of Dollar General. And at the concept, I don't know exactly what Billy Ray had to do with it as far as seeding the idea in Cal's mind, but it was, as you know, quite a success when he came up with the idea of everything being $1 or increments of $1 thereof. And so it was quite a thing. Frank's father, Frank II, my brother, came back. He was in business with relatives in San Antonio, Texas. I lived with him out there for a year. But Frank left that, and his interest in law just kind of drew him back to Scottsville, where he made a career there and eventually became circuit judge and went on to settling in Bowling Green in his later years. And Billy Ray settled in the Nashville area. He was in Madison, north of Nashville, but his business activities were centered in downtown Nashville. And of course, I joined the Air Force. Frank's dad got me an appointment to West Point, and I was there until I was disqualified physically, and went into the Air Force and the flying program, and made a career in the Air Force. And it was just quite an ordeal, or quite a pleasant experience. We all just savor the memories that we accumulated there growing up. And I think now everybody's kind of dispersed to different areas of Kentucky and all over the globe. You're in Tucson now, or Albuquerque now. Bobby's in Sitka, Alaska. And my third child, Barbara, has a sports bar in Fort Pierce and resides in Port St. Lucie.
When you were born, did you live in the Rock House?
I was born.
Did you?
Yes.
Did you live in the Rock House?
I lived in the Rock House, yes.
Yeah. And they had built the Rock House before you were born?
Absolutely. They built it when, right at my dad was killed in a car accident when I was 2 years old, and right after his death, and I was about 3 when the Rock House was built. And as a matter of fact, Billy Ray, my older brother, was 7 at the time, and they were in the process of building it. He was playing with a yo-yo down at the bottom of the stairs. You remember the what do you call it, the thing that holds the banister running up there. Anyhow, they were building at the time. The top was off, and Billy Ray was toying with that yo-yo down there. He really loved that yo-yo, understand. String broke, yo-yo fell down in there. He couldn't reach it. He went off to get his Uncle Ray to fetch it for him. When he got back, they'd put the top on it. So that was, let's see, that was 1934. So you do the math. That yo-yo down, which is there to this day, is probably maybe worth something as an antique.
And did you all never moved out of the Rock House, right? You stayed there your entire time in Scottsville? In
Yeah,
the Rock House?
yeah, entire time. But I was in Scottsville until my adult years when I left and went off to the service. And my mother lived there, of course. She had a radio program in Bowling Green, and she eventually played the piano on the radio. And it was called 30 Minutes with Miss Laura. And she liked Bowling Green, and eventually just went over there, rented a place, and worked in Bowling Green, and rented out the Rock House. But the Rock House, of course, was sold several years ago, and it's owned by someone else now. I still have to drive by it every time I go to Scottsville and check the Rock House out and see that porte-cochere, which is a covering over the main entrance to the house, is still there and in good shape and everything. It's quite it's close to my heart still.
Laura Catherine got married in the Rock House, right?
She sure did, and Cal never let me forget. I was about 4. I was about 4 years old when they were married, and I was sitting by the fireplace, and Cal and Laura Catherine walked in. It was a very somber occasion, and I yelled, "Hi, Cal, how you doing? Let's go get a hamburger." He never let me forget that. I just almost stopped the marriage right there.
And do you know much about your grandparents or your great-grandparents?
Well, as Papa Goad, I remember very little to him. Of course, my Uncle Will died before I was born. Papa Goad, my maternal grandfather, was a piano player, and in his later years he became a piano salesperson, and that's where the parlor grand ballroom that we have still, it's in Stan's house right now, is it just kind of passed down, and Stan and I are joint owners of that parlor grand, and that was Papa Goad, and he died when I was very young, and Papa Kemp, excuse me, my maternal grandfather. And Granny Kemp, Kate Kemp, was just a favorite with all the kids, always baking cookies and handing them out, and out there playing with them and shooting firecrackers with them during Christmas and everything. She's kind of a tomboy. And she's just an awful lot of fun. Mammy Goad, my paternal grandmother, she ran a large boarding house in Scottsville, about Block 2, counting from the courthouse on the north side of the road, East Main Street. And she did that until the time of her death. And so that's the only 3 grandparents that, of course, I recall. I just barely remember Papa Goad in my world years. And it just about sums up grandparent.
And tell us about your dad. What did he do for a living, and what can you?
My dad.
Yeah, what can you tell us about what he did?
Well, Dad, like I said, I can't tell you too much firsthand. Only what has been related to me by my parents and friends, everybody. When I was very young, shortly after my father's death, people would stop me on the street and tell me what a wonderful man he was, and how his heart was in the right place, and the handicapped people that he helped and things like that. And of course, attorneys are going to have they've been a questionable environment, you might say, in as much as of the 2 sides that go in a courtroom, one side is going to lose, and if they, of course, have questionable feelings about the other attorney. But as far as Dad was concerned as a person, my grandmother always told me that he was a deeply religious man, and that my mother was very much in love with him. After his death, I remember I was very young. My mother took me to bed with her, and she would say prayers on the side of the bed at night before retiring. She's a very, very good woman. Very disappointed and very devastated with my father's death, but her hide was tough and her back was strong when it came to children on misfortunes. Well, my earliest memory, I suppose, is my black nanny, I guess you'd call him, Uncle Fillmore. In the morning, my mother would usher me out the door, and Uncle Fillmore would be waiting at the back, and he and I'd spend time together in the backyard. And that old guy was just, he had street smarts that, as far as I'm concerned, are just unequaled today. And I still quote a lot of the things he told me as a kid, like when we had my Uncle Ray owned a German Shepherd, my mother owned a beautiful Maltese cat, and my mother was very pleased at the fact that a dog and a cat could get along well enough to eat out of the same dish. Big mistake. I turned my head 1 minute, there was a ruckus, looked back around, and of course the cat was in two pieces. And that just devastated me, and Uncle Fillmore recognized that. And he was the hero at the time, took me off down to an old peach tree in the backyard. And his method of getting peaches out of that tree was just, he would take the hat off his head and push up on a peach. It looked good, and if it dropped in his hat, it was ripe and ready to eat. And he'd take his old Barlow out of his pocket and shave the skin off of that peach. And he'd cut it in pieces, and we'd eat the peach a piece at a time. He'd get another one. We'd do that until both of us were full. And during the time that we were eating, all the time we'd be talking, and he'd be passing along these things that I remember to this day. He was a wonderful old man. And it really tore me up when he died. But in terms of my aware years and shortly after that, that is my heaviest memory, Uncle Fillmore.
You want to tell us about your Air Force, your early Air Force career?
Well, I was a weapons system officer. Of course, I flew in the back seat of fighter interceptors, jet fighter interceptors, and we had quite a might say public awareness of our presence. Noisy, of course, and people resented that, but it was colorful, and there was a lot of camaraderie in the ranks, and I loved it. I really did. I took to attack geometry. I was always good at math. And attack geometry in those days was done off the top of your head while you were in the radar scope. I was in the back seat, and my duties during the critical part of the mission was to set us up on a 90-degree beam pass and shoot rockets at the target. And I had to position us in the most favorable spot to get a good shot at the target. And then later I went to Alaska. That was before you came along. And Bobby, Gene, and I spent 3 years in Alaska. I bought an airplane up there, small two-place Alaska, and three of us saw parts of Alaska that were just so remote and so beautiful, it was just unbelievable. And since that was before Alaska became a state, it was a territory then, and silver dollars were the most popular medium of exchange downtown, and things like that. It was quite an experience, and as a matter of fact, I could have come back after 16 months, but Gene and I arbitrarily agreed to stay for the full 3 years because we liked it so much up there. And that was about it. My other assignments, I went from Alaska to Tyndall, spent 5 years there as an instructor in the Air Force Interceptor Weapons School, and then just kicked around, had different tours of duty in various places after that, including year's vacation in sunny Vietnam. And I came back to flight test at Tinker, F4s, and that was great. But at that time, my hearing had taken its toll. They caught up with me, and decided that I said too much. And I had to go take a test, hearing test, which led to the loss of my flying status. And when that was gone, I retired from the Air Force, and after that, everything's history.
And you tell us about flying on the Russian border in Alaska. Is that what you did, or?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I kind of get hair stands up on the back of my neck to this day thinking about that. Of course, I was in the back seat, a weapons system officer in the back seat in F-89. We were on duty at Galena. We were out there a month at a time. Galena was on the Yukon River. There was a dike around the air base so that during the spring thaw, the water would not flood the base. And Eskimo dog sleds were on that dike, and the only two radio, it was halfway between Fairbanks and Siberia. The only two stations we had at the time were the AFRS station. The disc jockey would come by the alert hangar and ask us what we wanted to hear and play that night. And a much better program, the second of the two was Moscow Mali, and Radio Russia, I forget exactly what the name was. And she would talk to us and tell us, to remind us that they were looking at us. She would tell us that we needed to replace certain runway lights. And we'd go out in the greenhouse with observation glass and closed house, look down the runway, and it was true. She was telling us accurately what was there. And we flew quite a bit between Galena and the Diomede Islands. Little Diomede, Big Diomede were the international boundary ran between the two Diomedes. And because of very cold weather and the ice being packed out, I mistook the edge of the ice for the American shoreline. And using that as a reference, we were over in Russian territory, and he scrambled the equivalent of our airplanes. It's called Russian flashlights. And we had the advantage because we had no armament on board, so if it had amounted to an encounter, we wouldn't have anything to shoot back with. So all we could do is just get out of there real quick, which we did post-haste. We popped one afterburner. We were at altitude about 30,000 feet. We popped one afterburner, tucked the nose, and I looked over toward Chukotski Peninsula. They scrambled from Providencia, and it was 0 visibility, which is the most testy weather condition you can possibly get in. So they didn't have a chance. They were climbing full load of fuel, and we had burned down about half of our fuel. Two airplanes were about the same performance. We were a little faster. And of course, we made it back to Galena unscathed. We'd had no encounter with them or anything. But those poor Russians had to go back and land in that 0 weather. So I don't imagine they liked us very much. They didn't know our names, but who we were, I imagine they were calling us SOB skis.
Did you suffer any repercussions because of that, or?
Yeah, there were repercussions. The commander, when we got back to the alert hangar, the phone was already ringing, and they were rattling swords, and it caused repercussions on both sides. But fortunately, it was absorbed in the two different chains of command, and we didn't get anything in our permanent file, any reprimands, anything of that nature. So we lucked out.
Did you participate in any competitions in the Air Force with rocket meets or anything like that, or?
Yeah, that's my favorite subject. Yeah, 1955, Yuma Air Force Base, Arizona. I was flying with base commander, General Ben King, and he and I flew. There were 4 guys and 2 alternates, 4 air crews and 2 alternate air crews in case somebody had to abort. They could tell. We were the number 1 air crew to take off, and we were high scorer in that rocket meet, and our team won. It was a worldwide Air Force rocketry competition, and our team won it, and Ben King and I were high scorer.
You want to tell us about some of the airplanes you flied?
Oh gosh, flew in a bunch of them. I can't remember all of them. Some were just temporary duty, and my basic rating was navigator. I was a civilian pilot, of course, but I was a navigator, and my eyes were not good enough to fly in the front seat. Although I had controls in the back of some of the airplanes, F-101, 106, F-4, TF-102, and the different airplanes at that time had controls in the back for training purposes. 104, I got to shoot in a TF-37. But anyhow, on the way to Vietnam, we were at England Air Force Base. I got to fly with a former F-101 pilot, invited me over. He was flying A-37, so I got to go up and shoot that one. A lot of fun, but as far as different airplanes in the military, my basic airplane was the F-94. Of course, T-Bird. We had T-33. We always used for transportation, and every squadron had 2 or 3 T-Birds. And let's see, the F-94 was my first duty airplane, and I went from that to the F-89, the Hog, that we very rarely refer to, but the F-89. Then I went to the first level flight supersonic airplane, F-101, at Tyndall Air Force Base. And F-101 had 2 Pratt & Whitney engines that were just fantastic. And that airplane, when you took off, you're like that. It was, the acceleration is so great. And 0 to, from break release to 60,000 feet, break release to 40,000 feet in about, I think 60 seconds, 60 or 90 seconds, something like that. Wonderful airplane. And that just, of course, from there I went to Vietnam. I had duty in an EC-47, Gunny Bird, and I was the airborne commander, called coordinated strikes on the bad guys on the ground. From my electronic findings, I had people on board that it was kind of an airborne command post. And I came back to the States and went to Tinker Air Force Base and flight test there. That was the Oklahoma City Air Material Area, better known as OCAMA. And our flight test included testing out and flying different test runs after they were done working on them in B-52s, C-135s, which are also tankers, and different airplanes that were worked on at OCAMA for different mods. And so after that, I just, when I lost my hearing and I was grounded.
And can you tell us anything about your daily life in Vietnam, or anything you remember about
what?
Your daily life in Vietnam, or what was base life like in Vietnam? Or
Well, Vietnam was just Vietnam. It was a miserable tour. I'll just tell it like it is. And we were on a closed base. I was in the very worst assignment in Vietnam as far as flying assignments were concerned. And we were at Phuket. And Phuket was a training base for the Viet Cong. And the Republic of Korea Tiger Division went in there and beat the flip out of them and chased them out. But they just, we were sitting there in the bottom of a bowl environment, mountains all around us, and every night we got hit by rockets. And it was just, Ho Chi Minh had his main headquarters there and lived before the ROC Tiger Division came in and took it over for us. And other than that, we just got clobbered all the time. I spent about half my tour in Vietnam under the bed with me and my dog Tex, flak vest and hard hat on. And I was glad to get out of there. The happiness to seeing Vietnam in the rearview mirror.
And what's your proudest accomplishment in your life?
Not going out of my mind with you 3 kids.
And I know you're not kidding there.
I'm proud of all 3 of you, but I think the biggest accomplishment in my life is survival. I think that probably would be, I was so glad to get out of Vietnam. We were hit, like I said, every night with rockets, and I was flying 8-hour missions during the day. And I was getting shot at 24/7. So I think surviving that tour was probably my biggest accomplishment in life.
Here's an odd question for you. Have you ever seen any, and when you were flying in a plane, have you ever seen any UFOs or anything like that, or anything strange?
Both on the ground and in the air. I've seen them on radar, and seen them, zipping around, just looking daylight. Never up close. Never met any little tiny men or anything like that. But I think the most vivid memory I have of UFOs was not even flying. It was one day when I was in aviation cadets in James Connolly Air Force Base, Waco, Texas. I was a 4th classman, fresh in the Air Force, and fresh from West Point over to the Air Force Aviation Cadet Program. I was walking in my prescribed stride, the one they direct you to take. And you had to march as a cadet, a certain way as a 4th classman. And I cut my eyes up, and lo and behold, I see this. It was a UFO, I'm sure. It couldn't have been anything else. And it was streaking across the sky at a fantastic altitude. I would estimate 60, 70,000 feet, just eyeballing it. And it was balling the jack. I mean, it was really going, and it just grabbed me, and I got chewed out by an upperclassman for stopping until I pointed at it and he saw it. Then both of us got chewed out by a 2nd lieutenant TAC officer. So that was my most memorable experience as far as you asked me about UFOs. That was it.
And do you remember anything about the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Well, we had quite an activity there on Tyndall Air Force Base. It became, they called it Tent City. The Army was going through there on their way to Cuba at the time, when and if we invaded it, and it looked like we were going to invade it. And we were confined to the Air Force Base. And we had visiting days where the family, you kids, and everybody's wife and kids could come out and spend a little time with us. And then when we were on 5-minute alert, we slept under the wings of the airplanes, and we were scrambled when the situation justified. And it was strictly a situation dictates type duty. We slept in light sleeping bags or whatever under the wings of the airplane. And when the buzzer went off, we popped in the airplane, we scrambled, took off, flew a racetrack pattern north of Havana, north of Cuba. And the Cuban jets, our counterparts thereof, were also flying a racetrack pattern on the other side of the line. And we were just waiting for the bell to sound to have at it. And that went on, of course, until President Kennedy backed them down, that big boat coming across with a lot of firecrackers on it, and they turned around and went home. That was the end, as you know, of the Cuban crisis.
Do you remember anything about the Bay of Pigs invasion?
The what?
The Bay of Pigs invasion? Do you remember anything about that?
Yes, I do. It's one of the most bitter memories of my career. I was not on duty at the time. We were just waiting. It was a matter of formality that the United States was going to take over Cuba, that we were superior militarily. We were in place. We had our best people in place. And we had an aircraft carrier in place to support the Bay of Pigs. And Dean Rusk later, much later, said that the biggest mistake he ever made was when they put the invasion force ashore at the Bay of Pigs, and the superior United States air power on that carrier was supposed to have supported them. He felt that it would make him look bad in the United Nations, so he canceled the support, and the Cuban American general who was in charge of leading that attack was pinned down by a bunch of inferior airplanes, B-25s and T-33s. And when he was on the radio dodging bullets down in the trench, he called the carrier and asked them about support, and they said, "Support has been denied, you're on your own." And to quote him directly, his reply there, which is history now, is, "And you, sir, are a son of a bitch." And that was the last of the attempt to invade Cuba, and that was the downfall of the Bay of Pigs. That decision by Dean Rusk to not give them air support after putting them ashore. I love Gatlinburg, been coming here 60 years now, and if I were to select a second home, it would be the Juneau, Alaska, or Gatlinburg, Tennessee. I love it here in the Smokies. And I think, to answer your question, I think I'd probably, if I had to choose a place, it would be another home besides Florida. It would be Gatlinburg.
All right.
I just watched that special of Kirstie Alley over there. Kirstie Alley, Kristen Alley, or so, what's her name? Kirsten Alley?
Kirstie Alley. Yeah.
Kirsten Alley, yeah. She's quite an actor. Boy, she can just produce expressions and everything. And they'd be talking to her about something sad, and she just devastated. And then they get her into something else, you know, and she's all of a sudden she's up. Are we rolling now?
Do you want to tell us about your
This is going to be hard. I can hurry.
As unaccustomed as I am to being on camera.
You want to tell us about tell us anything about Scottsville? Growing up in Scottsville?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you have to do that with a German accent.
Herr Goad,
There
the
you
more
go.
cooperative you are, the faster this will go. Trust me.
There we go. Watch out, you don't set that beard on fire.
All right.
That'll be a brush fire supreme. What was that action now?
Real German movies. You rolling?
I'm rolling. Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Of course, you have to
That's
have these. You have to have these theatrical expressions and everything.
Which is part of the half party. All right.
Computer and we'll start past stop.
Gotcha, gotcha.